He grew up in a small, quiet town where everyone seemed to know each other. People lived simple lives there, and most of them had their routines set from the moment they could walk. He didn't fit into that pattern. From a very young age, he found himself drawn to sounds that no one else noticed. The wind through the trees, the rhythm of rain on the roof, and the hum of the old refrigerator in his kitchen. It all seemed like music to him. While other children played games or watched cartoons, he would sit in his room, tapping on any surface he could find, creating beats that only he could hear. His family was kind but practical. They appreciated his curiosity, but they didn't understand his obsession with music. They worried about him spending so much time in his own world instead of learning useful skills. He would often sneak away to the small attic of their house, where an old piano had been left behind by the previous owners. It was slightly out of tune, its keys sticky in places, but to him it sounded perfect. He would press the keys, experimenting with melodies, learning the hard way how different notes could make someone feel happy, sad, or excited. At school, things were not easy. Teachers often overlooked him because he was quiet, preferring to observe rather than shout to be noticed. Classmates ignored him too, or sometimes teased him for being different. They didn't understand why he would hum or tap rhythms with his pencil during lessons. Sometimes, when he played small tunes on a borrowed instrument for a music class, the applause was polite but shallow. They appreciated the effort, but they didn't see the passion behind the notes. That lack of recognition was hard, but he didn't let it stop him. It only made him more determined to keep practicing, even if no one noticed. He had a small notebook where he wrote down his ideas, sketches of melodies, and lyrics that came to him at odd times. On the bus ride to school, he would watch people and imagine what kind of music their steps, voices, and laughter would create. Every sound had a rhythm, every emotion a melody, and he captured them quietly in his mind. Most of the time, he shared none of it, afraid that others wouldn't understand. It was easier to keep it to himself than to face the usual indifference. Music became his way of expressing what words could not. He learned that the piano, the guitar, and even simple percussion could tell stories in a way that talking never could. When he played, it felt like a bridge between him and the world, even if no one on the other side was paying attention. His fingers would move across keys or strings, sometimes fast and stormy, other times slow and gentle, reflecting moods he could not put into words. The more he played, the more he felt alive. It was a private magic, one that gave him comfort when life outside his room seemed heavy and gray. Despite being ignored, he found small joys. There was the old music store a few blocks away, where the owner, a kind elderly man, noticed his curiosity and let him try out instruments whenever he came in. Sometimes he would sit for hours, exploring the sounds of a violin or the deep resonance of a cello. The owner didn't push him or give advice. He simply watched as the boy's eyes sparkled with excitement. Those brief moments of acknowledgement were like sunshine in his otherwise cloudy days. They reminded him that his love for music was real and that it mattered somewhere, even if it seemed invisible elsewhere. Outside of music, life was ordinary and sometimes cruel. School projects, exams, and social events often highlighted what he lacked in comparison to others: confidence, popularity, or athletic skill. While others laughed together at lunch or talked about weekend plans, he would sit quietly, scribbling notes, tapping rhythms, or humming tunes under his breath. Occasionally, someone would notice, smile, or make a passing comment about how quietly he worked, but these moments were fleeting. Most days, he felt like a ghost moving through the hallways, present but unseen. He also had a few moments of fleeting friendship. There were children who appreciated his gentle nature or his unique perspective on things. They would sit with him under the shade of a tree during recess, talking quietly about dreams, ideas, or even the music they liked. These friendships were rare and delicate, but they gave him hope that there were people who could understand him, even if just a little. At home, his parents worried about his future. They didn't discourage his music outright, but encouraged him to focus on studies, hoping he would have a practical career to rely on. He tried, of course, to meet their expectations, but his mind always drifted back to the piano in the attic or the rhythm he heard in a dripping faucet. His love for music was not a hobby. It was a lifeline. Every time he played, he felt like he belonged somewhere, even if only in the notes themselves. The town itself was quiet, its rhythm slow, but it had its own beauty. Early mornings smelled of fresh bread from the bakery and dew on the grass. Evenings were golden with the fading sun, and the streets echoed with the distant chatter of neighbors. He absorbed all of it, storing impressions like pieces of a puzzle that he could later turn into music. To him, the world had melodies hidden everywhere, and he was the only one listening closely enough to hear them. As he grew older, his talent began to mature. He started creating small compositions that felt complete and meaningful. He would record them on an old device, listening over and over, critiquing himself but also feeling a quiet satisfaction. Sometimes, late at night, he would share snippets with the elderly music store owner or the few friends he trusted. The reactions were always gentle encouragements, never overwhelming attention, but they mattered more than any applause. They were proof that the music he created could touch someone, even if in a small way. Even though everyone around him seemed to overlook him, he learned to find strength in the quiet corners of his life. Music became not just a passion but a shield and a companion. It allowed him to face days when he felt invisible, to survive the indifference of peers, and to nurture a dream that one day might be recognized. The solitude that once felt lonely slowly became a space where his creativity flourished. And so, he continued, quiet, persistent, and unseen. Pressing keys, strumming strings, tapping rhythms, and collecting sounds from the world around him. Every note he played was a whisper to the universe, a message that even if no one was listening, he would keep speaking through the language he loved most. Music was his world, his escape and his voice, and it was only a matter of time before the world would notice. Little did he know, the years of being ignored and overlooked were shaping him into something extraordinary. Every rejection, every glance of indifference, every moment of solitude added depth to his music. And although no one in the town recognized it yet, his heart carried melodies that could one day make people stop, listen, and feel something they never expected from someone they once ignored. The years passed, and he grew older, but life continued to challenge him in ways that often felt unfair. School was no easier, and the world outside his attic or music store seemed determined to keep him invisible. Teachers still praised the loud, confident students, while his quiet presence was largely ignored. Even when he worked hard on projects or played the piano for school events, the recognition was minimal, a polite nod or a brief clap that never captured the heart behind his work. The lack of acknowledgement became heavier as he entered teenage years, when the need to belong and be seen grew stronger. Despite this, he refused to give up. Each rejection, each overlooked effort, pushed him to practice harder. Late at night, when the house was silent and the world seemed indifferent, he would play the piano, losing himself in the music that no one noticed. The attic became his sanctuary. He experimented with different styles, combining melodies he remembered from his childhood with rhythms he discovered from everyday sounds. He learned to make the piano sing in ways that reflected not just technique but emotion, pouring his heart into every note. Outside school, life felt equally challenging. Friends came and went, and social invitations often passed him by. Sometimes he watched from a distance as others laughed, shared stories, and created bonds he longed for. The pain of being invisible was constant, but it also became a source of inspiration. He started to write songs about his experiences, translating his feelings of loneliness, hope, and quiet strength into melodies and lyrics. Even if no one would hear them now, they existed as a testament to his resilience. The local music store continued to be his refuge. The owner, always patient and understanding, noticed his dedication. Sometimes the boy would sit at the old piano in the store after school, playing songs that seemed to tell stories only he could understand. The owner would listen silently, offering an encouraging smile or a simple remark like, "That's beautiful," but nothing more. Those words were enough. They reminded him that his music could touch someone, even if it wasn't the whole world yet. He began performing at small local events. At first, these were school talent shows or community gatherings with very few attendees. Each time, The audience seemed distracted or politely uninterested. He could feel the skepticism in the air as people whispered and shuffled in their seats. Even though his hands played with passion and precision, the applause was short, polite, and quickly forgotten. The sting of rejection was real, and it often left him questioning his own talent. Was it worth it? Was anyone truly listening? At one particularly disheartening event, he had spent weeks preparing a piece that combined a haunting melody with a delicate rhythm. He arrived early, rehearsed backstage, and felt the familiar mix of nerves and hope. When he finally played, he could see the audience whispering, some checking their phones, others talking quietly. The applause at the end was polite but lacking warmth. As he packed up his instrument, he felt the familiar ache of disappointment. He wondered if anyone would ever truly hear his music, if his voice could ever break through the wall of indifference that surrounded him. Yet, even in rejection, he found determination. He realized that performing was not just about applause but about the act itself, the way music allowed him to express what words could not. Each failure became a lesson, teaching him how to connect more deeply with his instrument and with himself. He experimented with timing, tone, and emotion, learning to translate the depth of his feelings into every note. Gradually, his performances became more than just practice. They became a reflection of his soul, an honest display of the life he had lived so far. A turning point came when he was invited to participate in a larger community event. It wasn't a national competition or a famous stage, but it was more significant than anything he had done before. The hall would be filled with people from the town, some curious, some indifferent, but the chance to perform in front of a bigger audience was exciting and terrifying at the same time. He spent days preparing, practicing until his fingers ached and his mind was focused entirely on the music. The preparation was intense, but he felt alive in a way he had never felt before, as if each note he played could speak the truth he had carried silently for years. On the day of the event, he arrived early to familiarize himself with the hall. The stage was larger than any he had played on before, and the audience seemed intimidating in its size. He could hear murmurs from the crowd as people settled into their seats, and he felt the familiar knot of nerves tighten in his stomach. But he also felt a quiet determination. He knew that this was more than a performance. It was a chance to share the music that had kept him going through years of being overlooked. Backstage, he watched other performers and felt a mix of envy and inspiration. Some had been practicing publicly for years, and the crowd knew them. Others were confident and loud, drawing attention effortlessly. He remained quiet, observing, but never doubting that his music could hold its own. When his turn came, he took a deep breath, walked onto the stage, and positioned himself at the piano. For a moment, he looked out at the audience, feeling the weight of their expectations and the shadow of years of neglect, and then he closed his eyes and let his fingers speak. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, as he tested the air of the hall. Slowly, the melody grew, gaining confidence and strength. The audience, initially distracted, began to notice. The music was different. It carried emotion that went beyond skill or technique. It was raw, real, and heartfelt. People stopped talking. Eyes turned to the stage. The air seemed to still as the piano told a story that words could never capture. He poured his years of loneliness, hope, and quiet strength into the performance. Every note seemed to reach into the hearts of those listening, speaking truths they hadn't realized they needed to hear. When the last note lingered and faded, the hall was silent for a moment longer than expected. Then, slowly, a few claps began, followed by more, until the applause filled the room. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. Others simply sat in stunned silence, moved beyond words. For the first time, he felt the full impact of what he had been doing all these years. People were listening. People were feeling what he had poured into the music. The years of being ignored seemed to fall away in that moment, replaced by a connection he had longed for but never believed would happen. Backstage, the music store owner, who had come to support him quietly, gave him a nod and a smile that said more than words ever could. Friends who had watched from the audience approached him, their eyes wide with admiration and surprise. The validation he had sought for so long had arrived not as empty praise but as genuine recognition of his talent and the emotion behind it. That night, as he walked home through the quiet streets of the town, the melodies he had played continued to echo in his mind. The experience changed him. He realized that while rejection and invisibility had been painful, they had also shaped his music, giving it depth and soul. He had learned patience, persistence, and the power of quiet dedication. The world had finally noticed, and it was a moment he would carry with him forever. Though the journey was far from over, he knew that this performance was a turning point. The music that had once been heard by no one now resonated deeply with many. And for the first time in his life, he truly understood that being overlooked did not mean being insignificant. His passion, his persistence, and his heart had created something powerful enough to touch others, and that realization became a spark of hope for all the future performances yet to come. After that unforgettable performance, a new chapter in his life began, though he did not know it at first. The applause, the recognition, and the warmth of the audience lingered in his mind, but he remained the same quiet, thoughtful person he had always been. He walked the streets of his small town with a sense of lightness, a feeling that the world was no longer entirely indifferent. Yet he also understood that true recognition would require more than one successful performance. It would take perseverance, courage, and a willingness to step beyond the familiar walls of his attic and the comforting silence of his room. In the days that followed, people who had once ignored him approached with curiosity and genuine interest. Neighbors stopped him on the street to ask about his music. Classmates who had laughed at his quiet nature wanted to know more. And even teachers offered words of encouragement he had longed to hear. The experience was both exhilarating and overwhelming. He had spent so many years hidden, unnoticed, and now attention came quickly, almost too fast. He felt grateful, yet cautious, understanding that the real challenge was not just being seen but sustaining the connection that music could create. Encouraged by the support, he began practicing with more intention. The small notebook that had once been a private journal of melodies became a tool for serious compositions. He experimented with harmonies, dynamics, and rhythm, exploring ways to communicate emotions more vividly through sound. The piano, guitar, and even a simple set of percussion instruments in the attic became his orchestra. Every afternoon and evening were spent refining techniques, shaping compositions, and pushing the boundaries of what he could express. The quiet dedication that had once been unnoticed was now his secret weapon, giving depth to the music that began to resonate with others. He also began attending local music workshops and gatherings. At first, he felt nervous, surrounded by people who were confident, talented, and used to attention. He worried that his quiet nature and past invisibility might make him seem inexperienced or awkward. But slowly, he found his place. The workshops became a space to exchange ideas, learn from others, and refine his skills. He observed other musicians with admiration and absorbed their techniques without envy, understanding that each person had their unique voice. These experiences enriched his music and deepened his understanding of how to move people emotionally through sound. While his musical world expanded, life outside continued with its usual challenges. His family remained supportive but pragmatic, reminding him to keep up with studies and responsibilities. Friends sometimes drifted, social events demanded attention, and everyday pressures never disappeared. He learned to balance his new recognition with the ordinary aspects of life. Music became a lens through which he could experience the world differently, transforming mundane routines into sources of inspiration. A passing conversation, the sound of rain, or the laughter of children could spark a melody or rhythm, and he kept capturing these moments in his compositions. One day, an opportunity arose that would test both his courage and talent. A regional music competition was announced, promising a larger audience, professional judges, and recognition beyond the borders of his small town. It was intimidating, but he felt a spark of excitement that had been dormant for years. This was a chance not just to be heard but to truly challenge himself. The thought of performing on a bigger stage, where expectations were higher and the audience unknown, filled him with both anxiety and anticipation. He knew it would demand more than skill. It would require emotion, authenticity, and the courage to risk failure again. Preparation for the competition became a new obsession. Every day, he focused on perfecting his pieces, refining each note, and practicing until every movement of his fingers was precise yet expressive. Late nights in the attic stretched into early mornings, as he experimented with dynamics, tempo, and phrasing. He recorded himself repeatedly, listening critically to every performance, learning how to convey not just sound but emotion. The music was no longer just a personal refuge. It became a story he wanted the world to feel, a reflection of his journey from invisibility to presence. As the day of the competition approached, nerves intensified. He could feel the pressure building, the weight of expectations and the fear of being judged. Yet, beneath the anxiety there was determination. He remembered the feeling of the audience at the community event, the way music had connected hearts without a single word spoken. That memory became his anchor. He reminded himself that regardless of the outcome, the value of music lay in the truth it carried, in the emotion it could share, and in the courage to present it honestly. When he finally arrived at the venue, the hall was far larger than anything he had experienced. Bright lights, rows of chairs, and the hum of anticipation filled the space. Other competitors moved with confidence, greeting each other and exchanging smiles. He felt a brief moment of self-doubt but pushed it aside, focusing on the music that had been with him through so many overlooked years. This was a new stage, a new audience, and a new opportunity to show that quiet dedication could transform into powerful expression. Backstage, he watched other performers and took in their confidence and skill. He noticed the audience reacting to each act, some with excitement, others with polite interest. When it was finally his turn, he took a deep breath, stepped onto the stage, and approached the piano. For a moment, he paused, letting the enormity of the moment sink in, and then he began to play. The first notes were gentle, drawing the audience into a delicate story. Gradually, the music grew richer, weaving a tapestry of sound that reflected years of hope, struggle, and passion. He moved with precision and emotion, each key resonating with his personal journey. The audience, initially reserved, began to lean in, captivated by the depth of feeling. They could sense the years of unseen effort, the quiet perseverance, and the heart poured into every note. As the piece reached its climax, a hush fell over the hall. People held their breath, moved not just by technical skill but by the story embedded in the music. Tears glimmered in some eyes, while others simply sat, mesmerized by the honesty and beauty of the performance. The music spoke without words, telling a tale of being overlooked, persevering, and finally being heard. Every emotion he had felt over the years, the rejection, the solitude, the hope, was present in the sound, connecting him to the audience in a profound and unexpected way. When the final note faded, the hall erupted in applause, a wave of appreciation that seemed to stretch endlessly. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, moved by a performance that went beyond talent and technique. He felt a rush of emotion himself, a mix of relief, pride, and disbelief. For the first time, he realized the power of his music to touch hearts beyond his small town. The years of being overlooked, ignored, and underestimated had culminated in a moment of undeniable connection. After the performance, judges and audience members approached him, offering words of praise and curiosity. Some asked about his inspirations, others about his techniques, and a few simply wanted to express how deeply they had felt the music. He smiled, humbled by their reactions, understanding that recognition was not just about applause, but about the impact of emotion shared through sound. His quiet journey had transformed into a voice that resonated with others, proving that perseverance, patience, and authenticity could triumph over years of invisibility. That night, as he walked back to his small home, the streets seemed different, filled with possibility. He thought about the journey he had taken, the long nights, the unnoticed practice, the small victories, and the persistent hope that had driven him forward. He knew that challenges would continue, that life would never be without obstacles. But he also understood that music had given him a way to navigate the world, to communicate, and to inspire. Each note he played carried a story, and he had learned that stories, when told with honesty, could touch even the most distant hearts. As he lay in bed that night, his fingers still tingling from the performance, he thought about the path ahead. There were more stages, larger audiences, and countless melodies yet to be discovered. But he also understood the value of quiet persistence, of moments spent in solitude creating something meaningful. The recognition he had received was gratifying, but it was only part of the journey. The real reward was the music itself, the ability to transform personal experience into something that others could feel, and the courage to continue sharing it with the world. After the regional competition, his life began to shift in ways he had never imagined. The recognition he received was not just a fleeting moment. It created a ripple that touched people around him and opened doors that had once seemed closed. Invitations came for him to play at local events, school functions, and small community gatherings. While he remained humble and quiet, the growing respect for his talent brought new energy and a sense of purpose to his life. He began to realize that the music he had once kept private had the power to connect with people in profound ways. He continued to practice with dedication, but now his focus included not only personal improvement but also how to reach the hearts of listeners. Every performance was approached with thought and care, as he understood that music was not just sound. It was a story, a bridge between emotions, and a means to inspire or comfort. He experimented with different genres, blended rhythms from different cultures, and created pieces that could evoke laughter, tears, or reflection. His compositions became richer, layered with the depth of his experiences and the honesty of his emotions. Despite the growing recognition, life was not without its challenges. Balancing school, family responsibilities, and a budding musical career demanded discipline. There were days when fatigue and self-doubt crept in, threatening to overshadow the joy of creation. But he had learned resilience through years of being overlooked. Each setback became an opportunity to learn, to improve, and to discover new facets of his music. The quiet determination that had carried him through years of indifference now fueled a path toward meaningful accomplishments. The community began to notice the depth of his talent. People who had once passed him by now sought his music for special events, celebrations, and moments of reflection. Parents brought their children to hear him play, inspired by the emotion and authenticity of his performances. The elderly music store owner remained a quiet observer, always supportive, proud of the journey that had led the boy from a hidden attic to a stage that could hold the attention of many. These moments of acknowledgement were not simply applause. They were validation of years of patience, perseverance, and unwavering passion. One evening, he received an invitation to perform at a prestigious concert hall in the city. It was unlike anything he had experienced, a chance to play before an audience far larger than any he had known. The excitement was mixed with nervousness. The scale of the venue and the unfamiliarity of the audience made him question if he was ready. He spent days preparing, practicing tirelessly, and fine-tuning every detail of his performance. Each note was chosen with care, each rhythm shaped to express emotion, and each pause measured to allow the audience to feel the story he was telling. The night of the performance arrived, and the hall was filled with anticipation. He felt the familiar knot of anxiety, but beneath it was a sense of readiness. He walked onto the stage, feeling the weight of the crowd's expectation, yet confident in the music that had carried him through so many years. He took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes were gentle, inviting the audience into a world of emotion and story. Slowly, the melody unfolded, growing in complexity and depth, reflecting the journey of a life spent learning, observing, and dreaming. As he played, the audience became captivated. The music spoke of quiet perseverance, the pain of being overlooked, and the triumph of being finally heard. Faces softened, some glistened with tears, and others simply leaned forward, absorbed in the story told without words. The hall, vast and grand, became intimate as the power of emotion transformed the space. He realized in that moment that music was more than talent. It was connection, a bridge that transcended barriers and spoke to the human experience. When the final note faded, The hall remained silent for a heartbeat before erupting into applause. The standing ovation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The emotion in the room was palpable, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was not just recognition for skill but acknowledgement of the heart, dedication, and authenticity he had poured into every performance. For the first time, he understood the profound impact his music could have on others, and he felt a surge of responsibility to continue sharing it. After the performance, people approached him with gratitude and admiration. Some shared how his music had moved them, inspired them, or brought comfort during difficult times. Others wanted to understand his process, eager to learn how such emotion could be conveyed through sound. He listened humbly, grateful for the connection, and realized that his journey had not just been about recognition. It had been about touching lives and creating moments of shared emotion. Returning home, he felt a sense of growth that went beyond the applause. He had discovered the power of persistence, the importance of staying true to oneself, and the beauty of sharing one's passion with the world. Each step of the journey, from being overlooked to performing on a grand stage, had shaped him not only as a musician but as a person capable of empathy, resilience, and inspiration. In the months that followed, he continued to perform at different venues, each experience deepening his understanding of the connection between music and emotion. He wrote new compositions inspired by people he met, places he visited, and the experiences he encountered along the way. Every note carried a story, every melody reflected a moment, and every performance became an opportunity to touch hearts. The quiet boy who had once been ignored had grown into a musician whose music spoke louder than words, carrying the weight of years and the joy of discovery. Despite the success, he remained humble, remembering the years when no one noticed him and the times when music was a private companion. He understood that recognition was fleeting, but the true value of his talent lay in the impact of the music itself. He nurtured his craft with care, never allowing the praise to overshadow the dedication and authenticity that had brought him this far. Each performance was a dialogue, a gift, and a reminder of the journey that had made him who he was. He also began mentoring other young musicians who struggled to be heard. He shared the lessons he had learned about patience, practice, and the courage to keep going even when the world seemed indifferent. He encouraged them to embrace their unique voices and to find solace and strength in music, just as he had. These moments of teaching became a new source of fulfillment, a way to pass on the quiet wisdom that had been his guide through years of being overlooked. Through it all, the love for music remained the heart of his life. Every day, he practiced, composed, and explored new sounds, discovering new ways to express emotion and connect with listeners. He never forgot the attic, the small piano, and the early years of solitude and practice. Those experiences had shaped not only his talent but also his character, instilling resilience, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to his passion. As time went on, he understood that being overlooked had not been a weakness but a shaping force. It had allowed him to develop depth, sensitivity, and a profound understanding of the human experience. The music he created carried the weight of those years, the patience, the hope, and the quiet determination that had defined his journey. And through each performance, he continued to share a piece of his soul, reminding everyone that even the quietest voices can leave a lasting mark when they are true to themselves and their passions. The years that followed were filled with music, growth, and new opportunities. He had come a long way from the quiet boy in a small attic, unseen and overlooked. Now, he was invited to perform in halls and venues he had only imagined in his dreams. Despite the fame and recognition, he remained grounded, remembering the long years of practice, solitude, and the feeling of being ignored. He understood that the music itself was the heart of his journey, and every performance was a chance to share the story of his life and emotions. He continued to compose music that touched hearts. Each new piece reflected experiences, emotions, and people he had encountered. Sometimes the melodies were joyful, capturing moments of celebration and laughter. Other times they were soft and melancholic, expressing the struggles and quiet pain he had once felt. His music became a reflection of life itself, a mirror of the human experience. people who listened could feel the honesty in every note, the years of perseverance, and the depth of his passion. Performances became more than just playing music. They became events where stories were told without words. He noticed the audience's reactions. A tear forming in someone's eye, a smile spreading across a listener's face, or the silent stillness as people absorbed the melody. Each reaction reminded him of why he had continued through years of being overlooked, why he had practiced late at night when no one was watching, and why he had never given up on music. These moments were more rewarding than applause or recognition. They were the connections that mattered most. He also began collaborating with other musicians, combining their talents to create something greater than any single performance. These collaborations opened new doors and allowed him to explore styles he had never tried. Jazz, classical, folk, and modern music blended in his compositions, creating a unique sound that was recognized and appreciated by audiences and critics alike. Yet, despite the growing reputation, he never lost the humility that had guided him from the start. Each note he played remained an honest expression of his heart, and he approached every collaboration with respect and curiosity. Beyond music, he started visiting schools and community centers, encouraging children and young adults to explore their talents. He shared his story, emphasizing the importance of patience, dedication, and believing in oneself, even when the world seems indifferent. His experiences resonated with many who had felt overlooked or underestimated, and his message inspired courage and persistence. He reminded them that true success is not measured by immediate recognition but by the commitment to one's passion and the honesty with which it is pursued. Life was not without challenges. There were moments of self-doubt, fatigue from continuous travel and performances, and the pressure to maintain the high standards he had set for himself. But he faced these obstacles with resilience, drawing strength from the years when he had been ignored and had found solace in music alone. He understood that challenges were part of the journey, and that overcoming them added depth to both his life and his art. One evening, he was invited to perform at a grand concert in a hall that could hold thousands. The event was unlike anything he had experienced, and the scale was intimidating. The audience was diverse, filled with people of all ages and backgrounds, many of whom had never heard him play before. He felt the familiar nerves building but also a quiet confidence. He remembered the community hall where he had first been noticed and the regional competition that had changed his perspective. Those moments reminded him that no matter the size of the audience, the power of music remained the same. As he began to play, the music flowed effortlessly, each note carrying emotion, experience, and honesty. The audience listened in awe, some moved to tears, others smiling quietly, absorbed in the melodies that spoke directly to their hearts. The music seemed to bridge gaps, connecting people from different walks of life, evoking memories, feelings, and a shared sense of humanity. He realized in that moment that all the years of being overlooked had led him to this point, allowing him to play with authenticity and depth that could touch thousands at once. After the performance, people approached him to express gratitude and admiration. Some spoke of how the music had brought back forgotten memories or given comfort during hard times. Others shared how it inspired them to pursue their own passions, even in the face of doubt or adversity. He listened humbly, understanding that his journey had become more than personal achievement. It was now a source of inspiration for others. Each story, each word of appreciation, reinforced the meaning of his dedication and the impact of his music beyond himself. He continued to travel, perform, and create, yet he remained deeply connected to the roots of his passion. The quiet moments in his attic, the hours of practice when no one was watching, and the long years of being ignored had shaped the person he had become. Those experiences gave his music depth and authenticity that fame or recognition alone could never provide. He understood that being overlooked had been a necessary part of his journey, teaching resilience, patience, and the true value of passion. In time, he began mentoring a new generation of musicians who shared his quiet determination and love for music. He taught them not only techniques but also the importance of perseverance, the courage to express themselves honestly, and the joy of connecting with others through sound. His guidance became a bridge for many who had once felt invisible, showing them that dedication and authenticity could overcome indifference and lead to meaningful expression. Through it all, he never lost the joy of creating music for its own sake. Whether composing alone at night, performing on grand stages, or teaching others, he found fulfillment in the act of sharing his passion. Every melody, rhythm, and note carried the story of his life. The struggles, the quiet moments, the triumphs, and the emotional journey that had shaped him. Music remained both a companion and a messenger, conveying what words could never fully express. In the end, he realized that the years of being ignored were not a hindrance but a foundation. They had taught him resilience, empathy, and the power of perseverance. They had shaped a musician whose music could move hearts, inspire courage, and create connections across time and distance. His journey from obscurity to recognition was not just about talent, but about the dedication, honesty, and passion that he carried in every note. And so, he continued, not seeking fame or accolades, but embracing the beauty of music and the lives it touched. Each performance, each composition, and each lesson taught became a testament to the quiet power of persistence, proving that even someone once overlooked can leave a mark that echoes far beyond the small corners of their beginnings. His music became a legacy, a story of patience, hope, and the undeniable truth that passion, when nurtured with love and determination, can move the world and touch every heart it reaches.